Welcome to the Music Chamber Podcast. I'm Dan Hegarty, and I'm here at Ultimate Studios. And we're here to bring you an excellent music show. We have guests here who are going to talk about their music industry experience. We have great bands perform here. We have a very professional setup, as you can see. What? No, it's fine. As I was saying, we have excellent musicians who play here, great guests, and you're going to get to see a little bit of that and hear some too. Check it out, and come right back.
You're going to learn lots.
It's too bad how things change quickly. Beauty can be kept. It's too bad.
I can't pay my bills on time with $8 an hour, so I meet you at the bar tonight for the happy hour. I said,
The evening's evil. We are the atmosphere. Atoms filled with fear.
Being together for, I would say, you got to play for 6 months or a year because you're not even a band yet. You don't have your shows together. And for me, if you can't play for an hour, you can't make money. An hour. Not 40 minutes, not 30 minutes, an hour.
They giving you a budget to work inside of? Is it that kind of thing?
Comes from the label mainly, I think, that limits the manager, and the manager sees what they have to do with that money and how many shows they want to do with that money. So it affects how many people go on the road.
If you see me sweat and you see me crying on stage, you see me bleeding, it's real.
Yeah.
You know, and the guys play really hard and we give them a show. That's how you get to the next level.
So now you see what we do here at the Music Chamber. We have great musicians, we have excellent guests, we have a lot of good friends who come to see us, and what?
Dude, our guest right now, they're alone in the studio. We forgot again. We're sitting here doing this video. We left him alone in the studio.
This is what happens when you put drummers in charge of things.
Oh my God.
We got to get to the guest right now.
We got to go.
Let's
go.
Yep. And Hero.
We are live.
Hello.
All right. Welcome to the Music Chamber, everybody. Dan Hegarty here.
Charlie Waymeyer here.
And
Tim Pedersen
Tim
there.
Pedersen over here.
Tim Pedersen. So here we have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda with Luke Skywalker today. So I'm here with the two biggest mentors I've had as a drummer in California. So once again, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You've gotten me to this level, and it's been an interesting ride.
And we're all still friends.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, that's pretty shocking. The fact that you're friends with him, I think, is the most shocking.
Wait a second.
I tried to get rid of him for years, and he just kept coming back around.
Yeah. So that's funny. So Tim is here because Tim taught both Charlie and myself. He is a very experienced touring and session drummer and music educator as well. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Herman's
You're
Hermits and hey, I didn't even say it yet. You really are my teacher, aren't you? Herman's Hermits and Paul Revere and the Raiders are two of the artists that you work with?
I was kind of the king of oldies for a long time, and I toured with a bunch of different people, and one of them was Peter Noon from Herman's Hermits. And,
nice.
Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders, Del Shannon, Little Anthony. There were all sorts of
Awesome.
sorts of them in that era that I got to play with. So very fun.
Yeah, when you met my folks when they were out here visiting, and you told them some of that, they were like, listen to everything he says.
You know, I remember meeting your parents. Isn't that funny that
Yeah.
I actually remember that? Interesting.
Yeah,
That was a long time ago.
10 years now. That was in the fall of 2007.
Wow.
So yeah,
Man,
it's quite
long
some time ago.
Luckily, I'm still the same
That was
age.
10 years ago, man.
It was.
Yeah, that's what he said. It was
That's
10 years.
crazy.
Yeah,
It is.
this is Charlie who says he just absorbs everything he needs to
I
hear
was
and
doing a
misses
technical
everything.
job for a second. I have many jobs happening right now.
That's
All
true.
you guys have to do is talk.
Yeah.
Including grabbing those fries for the people next door.
Here.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. So we usually open the show talking a little bit about what we've been up to and some sports, but I think we're both going to skip that this week, huh? No,
There's sports?
no sports this
I have
week.
no idea what you're talking about.
Nope.
What are sports?
Nope. The Giants definitely didn't lose 51-17.
The Chiefs won.
51
Did
to
they?
17.
No.
I was going to say.
It was fucking pathetic.
Yeah. It also hurts
Even
to lose.
Oscar was pissed off.
Oh, I don't blame him, man. It always hurts a little bit more to lose to the Cowboys. Believe me, I know. Tim, do you watch football too? I don't remember.
No, I don't.
You're
I
smart.
don't. No, I've just never been a sports guy. It's funny because I look and go, man, that looks like it'd be so much fun to be into, and I just started playing really young, and that's all I ever did.
You stayed focused. That's good.
I guess, yeah. I guess. I played a tiny bit of basketball in junior high school, and I was really bad at it.
Oh, really?
And then I ran track, and they told me I'd either had to quit smoking or run track, and so I decided running track was a good thing to give up. Because I smoked for about 40 years after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I know, not exactly. Kids, don't try that at home.
Yes, definitely don't try that.
Does
at home.
anybody smoke cigarettes anymore? I don't think hardly anybody does.
Oh, there's plenty. Believe
Yeah?
me. Yeah.
I've
Not
never
as many
seen
as it used to be, though.
No, it's
Boy.
definitely different from a couple of years back for
yeah,
sure.
I hardly ever see anybody smoke those damn things.
Well, before we dive in, Dan, what do we have coming up on December 7th?
We have the most important show of the year. We have our Toys for Tots benefit, the annual show that we do here at Ultimate Studios in LA. So we're going to be doing this. This is the third year. Thank you again to the Marines and Toys for Tots. We appreciate it. And thank you for serving our country. So this year we have Electra Barakos is going to play. She has like a very, I guess, like 90s like garbage and L7 vibe, but also very like modern pop-wise. I guess she's kind of like Flyleaf and what's that man? Hailstorm, I think, is the tune with the brother and the sister. So very high energy stuff. Dan Welby is the drummer. He's a friend of the show as well.
Dan's pulling double duty.
Yes, and Dan Welby's also playing with
the Blood Moon Howlers.
Yeah.
Wow, nice.
So we've got
Be a
those.
busy night for him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And an easy night for Charlie because
also makes my night a lot easier.
Were you going to be playing?
No, I only
Oh,
have
you
one
have
drummer
one
changeover.
drummer,
Yeah.
that's right,
No,
that's
Charlie has 72 jobs to do that night, so he will not be performing.
And then opening is country artist Rob Linus.
That's going to be awesome. We have a
Yep.
really great show planned. So
the
thing about the show, the most important thing about the show, it is free with a toy. Bring a toy, a new unwrapped toy if you want to come to the studio. The show is free. Otherwise, you got to pay $20. And the Marines are going to be there with the collection jar. You're not getting
so you're not
past
getting in. don't even think about it. You don't bring a toy. There'll be two Marines out there saying,
No, sir. Not one bit. And it's a great cause, and we really love packing it out for the kids because especially this time of year, you know. I was
all
very
three
fortunate.
acts are great, too, so we're going to have a lot of good music. Plus some extra video. We're going to spruce this one up a little bit. It's going to be a fun night.
Yeah, we've got some excellent new crew members who are going to be helping us out that night.
Yep, we have a big crew. And at 7, we're going to be doing a behind-the-scenes Recording Ninja Workshop broadcast just of the setup. So from 7 to 7:20, before we take a break to eat before the show, we're going to go through the whole entire setup.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you're going to get a full experience whether you're at home or here. So if you can't come here, go online and check out the show online because we will be live streaming.
Yep.
Can they donate online?
Yep. We'll have the donate buttons, the whole 9 yards,
Oh,
and there's an event page right now on Facebook that we're getting all this information slowly on as well.
Yes. We're getting there. And I also want to thank our two sponsors. We have two great sponsors for this event. We have Warlord Clothing. Thank you again to Bruce and Warlord. They're going to be giving us some stuff for the raffle, as is Hellbent Leather, run by my friend Brooke. Thank you again, Brooke. Most appreciated. So there will be a surprise or two
for
in there
knowing
as well.
all these clothing companies.
Oh, here we go, right?
Is that what you're waiting?
Okay, says the guy with the T-shirt he clearly got with the console that's over
You know
here.
how many of these I have?
No, he bought the T-shirt and the console came with it.
Oh, so that's how it
I have
is.
enough of these that my wardrobe is this.
Yeah.
A stack of it.
I'm like,
Stack of swag.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Who's that remind you of?
Uh-oh.
Well,
I'm not going to call any names out, but
Not today, anyway.
exactly.
Yes. So, Tim, now that you've been a good enough sport to come here with us and hear all about our show and whatnot, no pressure. You're coming on the 7th, right? You'll be here.
oh yeah, I'll be here.
Good.
It's right near the end of classes.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. It's the first Thursday in December, I think. It's 4 weeks from tonight. So 4 weeks from tonight, mark your calendar. Make sure you're here. If you're not here, get online and watch it there.
Yep.
It'll be awesome. It's a great cause. We're happy that everyone's here. And we'll have more information about this as we get up to the event. There will be more episodes, more videos, more stuff coming out.
It's cool you guys do that.
Well, it's fun. You know what I mean?
bet.
It
It's
feels
such a wonderful cause for kids, you know.
Yeah. I was also very fortunate to have a good holiday season, and my birthday is December 18th. So I have a good time this time of year, but I know other people are not as fortunate sometimes.
yeah,
so I like to be
absolutely.
able to, have them enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah.
So.
Can't imagine Christmas without getting gifts or some kind of when you're young, especially. You know.
Oh, definitely.
A little higher.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to eat these mics.
There you go.
There we go.
That's better.
There we go.
Okay, so you'd like me to talk into this thing?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. All right. So Tim, with all your experience in the studio and on the stage and on the road and dealing with all of the personalities involved in the type of work that you did as a drummer and that you're still doing now, let's talk about some of like the essential skills for doing the gig. Now, obviously, you've got to be able to play. That's first.
Yeah.
But like, what's a little deeper than that? What would you say is crucial to especially younger drummers or drummers that are kind of struggling with that situation?
I think you just a really important thing. I'm sure you guys agree with this, is learning to hang with people. You're expected to play. That's the bottom line. You got to do whatever the gig does. You wouldn't be showing up for it if you weren't equipped to do the gig.
Right.
Unless your parents are really famous or something.
Yeah, and that does happen.
Yes.
But I think the thing is, you have to hang with these people, and you also have to give, especially as a drummer, the idea to them of your confidence as a player, because that's so much of what our job is to be confident and rule the band. That's what we do back there. It's the old adage that you've heard 1,000 times, which is a great drummer in a band makes a great band, and you have a band with a bad drummer, you have a bad band. So it's just without it grooving from the back, it doesn't do much.
Right.
But back to your question, I think it's just learning to really get along, not just get along with people, but have the kind of personality people want to be around to some degree at least, because you have to spend so much time with them.
Yes.
Even if you're, whenever I would travel, and luckily I never had to share hotel rooms and stuff, which I know people do. And I never really wanted to, because I always loved having that time, where you could kind of go, oh, God, I can be rid of these guys for a minute. But I've had actually in my lifetime, my most exciting moments, some of my most exciting moments I remember from hanging with a band out on the road, and not necessarily on stage. Having great shows. That's always the most memorable of things in life, is the great times you had playing.
Totally.
But I remember sitting in Portland doing a gig a few years ago with the band, and the night before we performed, we went to this really fantastic restaurant, and we sat in there, we were talking, having some wine, and it started to lightly snow, and I'll still remember it. There's times I remember being in New Orleans at a restaurant with a band and just laughing and drinking wine. There seems to be a pattern here of fun and wine, and I'm not sure how that goes, but
yeah, that was my experience too when I finally started touring too with my original band Cobra Venom. The times that we spent like hanging out in the hotel rooms and going to the restaurants and that were some of the more memorable parts of the tour. We loved the playing, obviously.
Oh yeah, of course.
But one of the things that I was able to do with those dudes is there was a little cultural diffusion when we went to Vegas and they had a Dunkin' Donuts, and I was like, we've got to go to Dunkin' Donuts, and there were 3 Californians. They'd known about it. Well, I think one of them had it a couple of times, but the other 2 were like
Dunkin' Donuts, isn't it?
I love Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh,
the coffee's, but
it became the mission of the 2 guys that weren't sleeping to go out and get the donuts. So it was fun. It was interesting too because we got to explore the area, and I guess like the app that we had took us away from the strip and away from all the stuff into like the suburbs of Vegas, and we're like,
oh, weird.
It looks like a movie soundstage. Like it's so weird looking out in that part of Las Vegas.
I have a lot of friends that live out there now, and it's amazing how they've built these little communities.
Totally.
With these massive McMansion-style houses. It's pretty cool, and and you can get one for $200,000, which is, if you're back in Cleveland, it's probably expensive, but here
for Los
cheap.
Angeles, it's like what?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm there.
You can get
a lot of musicians have relocated to Vegas for exactly that reason.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's work there. I know a couple of people that moved there recently because they were having a bit of a tough time in L.A., but they moved to Vegas and started working like crazy. So. And they were, legit players that could, really read and do that thing, so they could pick up a lot of those kind of gigs that are out there.
And there's a lot of that kind of gig work in Vegas.
And that's a great gig. I mean, those gigs are fantastic. You get to play all the time, and you get paid, and you get benefits. And
so that's another essential skill right there is the reading. That's something that gets overlooked, I think, in a lot of cases.
It's a funny thing, and I don't know if, again, maybe Charlie, if you'd agree with this because you were in the studio all the time seeing this, but I find when I was younger, and I don't want to denigrate anything that I did when I was young, but it was so important to play a multitude of styles well and to really be able to read. And I'm glad I can read, that I'm a good reader, and it's really helped me a million times. But I would have to say, as the years have went by, because of technology, I find it's less and less reading,
Yeah.
Because they can send you the material so easily. You just send, here, let me send you the record over the internet, and you listen to it. And I make my own charts, which I guess, Dan, that would be a good answer, even if they don't equip you with charts. Yeah, I almost always have notes, when I'm playing with a group. Because, if you play with a bunch of different people, or if you just haven't played with those people in a long time, the notes get you through the tune. So I guess that's reading in a sense, and by being a good...
That's transcription, too, which
is
part of the reading.
Yeah, it is. And
skill.
you have to be able to dictate. You're right. Reading is a valuable tool. I just find that I see a lot of really great young drummers that can't read that are hella good. They're just really good and equipped to do the gig.
Yeah.
So.
I think it depends on what you're doing, too.
Yeah.
If you're doing movie scores and that sort of thing, there's probably a lot more of that. But there's hardly ever charts on these sessions here.
Yeah, and I find there used to be charts.
15% of the time.
You get through them so fast in the old days, but I mean, it's significantly changed. When I was young and doing a lot of records, it was like $300 an hour to be in the studio, $250 an hour, and that was in the late '70s and early '80s, and then through the '80s, and it got even more expensive because the budgets got so large, But you don't have to do that now. You can. You can get a place for $1,000 a day and all the trimmings, So the thing about drumming always was it takes so much time. It's so difficult, and it's so expensive.
Yeah,
because of the fact it takes so much time. You have to set all that stuff up. So I wonder if that's had some effect on the fact that we're not in quite so much of a hurry to get through things. I find that we're not. When I was young, you had to really just
because time was money, and you had to get it done.
Was,
yeah,
and you were paying a bunch of session guys to do it. And so it was a whole room full of guys getting well paid, and then you're paying a fortune for the studio. So
but
I
that's
think
what
that
allowed you to get done that fast, though.
What's
when
that?
you had the guys in the room that were that good.
True.
And
it was
were
exciting
a lot more
to play with people that good.
And they were a lot more thought out from the beginning. Whoever the producer, the writers, where things came in, there was an idea, there was a plan.
True.
Whether it would be sounds or ultimate goal, that sort of thing.
Right.
There's way more planning.
Yeah.
And one thing that changed a great deal, too, I think, because of technology is certainly because of technology is once we went to digital, then we could easily punch drums. And that really expedited things because before, again, when I was young, back when dirt was being created, you had to get all the way through you weren't going to go punch anything in, especially if it was cymbals, because you couldn't. There's no way you could punch anything around there. So you might be able to make a cut in the middle and take pieces, but you couldn't chop fills all over the place. Maybe some master editors did, but then when digital came, suddenly you could just do songs and pieces, and then we could also play last. That was the other thing that I really did enjoy about recording later, is that you could put the drums on last.
Yeah, because back in the day, it was drums first for everything.
It was, and sometimes you hear the records back and go, "Wow, I never would have played that had I known what that was going to be." I remember doing things sometimes by myself, with an idea how the song went, just the music and playing it down, and then the producer going, "Okay, that sounds great," and then you hear it later when you had no idea it was going to be that. Didn't know what the vocals were going to be, so you're just trying to play in the parts that you hoped would be make the most sense as far as where they were in the tune. And sometimes it was great, and sometimes it wasn't as great.
Yes.
It was always great, man. Everything.
It's like, but you were always great, right?
Yeah, that's right. I was always great.
Your performances were always spot on,
always
clean
great.
fills.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. I would say that was me, but you know that's not true. As this Charlie.
But I think that's a big thing, with nowadays. People, the multi-stylist thing is important, especially like you say, Charlie. If you're doing legitimate stuff like films, doing movies and such, a lot of television stuff, then generally I think you have to read a lot more.
Right.
And you're on the real different kind of time constraints because it's expensive. And also film and movies, television, they still pay.
Yeah.
Well.
When I get called for things too, in a lot of cases, like the last session I did and one I have coming up, I'll get asked to play drums for someone who just doesn't have the time or they're not here in town. So they'll send me whatever MP3s there are of the music, or sometimes the Logic session if I'm lucky. So the fact that I have this stuff ahead of time and I can make a chart for this is tremendously helpful. Yeah. Now, sometimes they'll have an idea for drums and they'll have something programmed, or they'll give me a song as a reference. But The fact that I have the training to actually go through the tune myself and figure out parts,
Yeah.
it definitely makes the whole thing smoother. I can do demos for them. And now, because we live in this amazing era, I can record a little something in the studio and send it to them, or I can program something that's going to be similar to what I play. And then by the time we actually have the session, I'm rehearsed because I've been practicing with that track.
Absolutely.
And I've been writing my own part. And when I get in there, it's like 1, 2, 3, you know.
And see, that is a big difference, I think, today. One reason you don't have to read, and another reason is you really know the tune. I mean, I used to do whole albums in a day, and we'd sometimes run the song down once or twice and go, yeah, okay, and just move on and get 15 songs done in a day.
15, wow.
Yeah, we could run through a lot of tunes in a day. So, because we just put the charts up, you know, we'd do a quick run through of any parts in the chart that looked funny, and then we put the tune down a couple times, and generally we'd get something, you know.
I did a lot of library work that way.
Right.
They'd come in with a book of charts, and you'd be doing like 3 or 4 days in a row, 15 to 18 songs.
Yeah.
And it was just boom, boom. It's a few takes a piece, just like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, you know, you never get it under your belt in the same way. You know, we've talked about this a great deal, Charlie, is I'm a huge fan of band drummers, guys that play for bands.
Yeah.
Because they often are only, you know, often they're one-dimensional. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just what it is because they've gotten to play in one band for a long time. But what might sound like something derogatory, which it isn't, to me is the beautiful thing is as a personality, you've learned to play the music your way.
Yeah.
And you play with a group of people that love what you do, or you wouldn't be in the band. And I think there's a really cool thing that happens. That's why, you know, most of the modern drummer magazines, that still exist, right?
Oh, yeah, that's still out there.
They're out there. The ones that always seem to sell are the ones that have the famous, you know, are big rock guys on the cover.
Right.
More so than not, because, you know, John Bonham was amazing because he was in Zeppelin. You know, and he was amazing. But he got to really focus his best thing on one style of music. And, you know, inside that style, of course, they played multiple styles to some degree, but it was still Zeppelin. You know?
Yeah, totally.
And all the way through, he played the same stuff. It was the same amazing stuff. Versus a guy, let's say, like Vinny, who is one of my Vinny Caliuta is one of my very favorite drummers. But he's, you know, he's a great band drummer. But, you know, I think you remember the Alex Van Halen's more. You know, because they just
that's one of my all-time favorites for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of Alex, and he's an unusual player. You know? So would he have been a successful player without Van Halen because he's such an unusual player? Hard to know. You can't be that unusual and make a lot of records.
Yeah.
You know, because that's not what people are generally, you know, expecting. Matt Chamberlain would probably be one of the ones that is the most out player.
Yeah.
Does different things. You know, and he to me is really the premier session drummer in the fact that he brings a lot of personality to the recordings.
I think you could say Keltner's kind of like that too.
Yeah, Keltner, that's right. Good point. Yeah, Keltner's very much like that. And he's an unusual, from my understanding of talking, I don't know him, wish I did, but from talking to people in studios that I was recording that he was just there, that often goes about things in a real unorthodox ways because he's allowed to, and he makes those wonderful recordings. And that Bill Frisell stuff and things that he's played on is absolutely fantastic.
He did some great stuff with Fiona Apple too.
Yeah.
Both of those drummers did.
Yeah,
actually.
that's right.
Oh, yeah, those
I
drummers.
forgot about that stuff. That was really good.
Yeah, one thing. Most of my drumming career has been as a band drummer. I'm usually in a band for quite some time, and I would get a little bit of work here and there, or I'd collaborate here and there. But I would really be part of whatever group it was. You know, in the writing process, creative process, and even some of the business stuff. Something that really was valuable to me about learning other styles and by getting the music education that I have is that it actually made my playing of the styles that I liked even better.
Much better.
Like
No, I
when I
agree.
moved here,
I
I did not have any intention of playing more hardcore and metal and hard rock drums. I was actually looking to expand and be something very different. But the more I did other styles and I learned, I got deeper into jazz and deeper into blues and Latin and all this. It was like, all this is doing is making me want to play my metal stuff like more and add stuff, things that I wasn't doing with that style before. And I think that's what helped me really both enjoy the bands that I was in as the drummer in the band, and I was able to bring something to it other than speed and volume, which is the two things that every metal drummer has.
Yeah,
like speed and volume, what else do you have? Like you need and because I had all these other influences and styles on my education, I had a bigger toolbox to work with.
Yeah, I think, and it makes, all the things about learning, we can look at it selfishly. Sometimes people really stay, I don't want to do that, it'll ruin my playing or something. But, selfishly, the more I know about the drums and the more I know about music, the more fun it is.
Oh, yeah.
The more you learn, suddenly the things you can do, and just the things you understand, I think. And the things that maybe I used to think were really important about playing, I don't find to be as important. You know? I find I like any drummer that can move me when I hear it. Sometimes I like non-drummers that play the drums. Very much. You hear guys that can they can play a couple beats. I saw a clip on Facebook
Stevie Wonder.
the other day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I saw a clip of McCartney playing the drums.
Oh,
Yeah.
I saw that
sweet,
clip.
man.
He was awesome.
It's awesome. It's sweet. He's got that Ringo thing going like crazy, and it's just. I was like, okay. No,
Did
I
you see the
hear
little
that on
story that
record.
went with that video?
No, I
about how somebody asked John Lennon once if Ringo was the best drummer in the world. He goes, he's not even the best drummer in the band.
No, that's luckily as being a big, huge Beatle guy, that's actually an untruth. It's a wives' tale, but it was mean. So I know I'm a huge Ringo fan.
He knows everything about the Beatles.
Oh yeah,
I know
I just thought it was a
that.
funny wisecrack.
It is a funny wisecrack.
I do think Ringo gets a bit of a bum rap, but when you're in a band with those three, it's kind of like
It
all
is
right.
hard. But he was a complete timekeeper, that guy. I mean,
Absolutely.
he invented the modern day rock drumming with the open hi-hat. Nobody'd done that before.
Well, even like songs like "Come Together" and "Ticket to Ride," like there are so many interesting things that he did with those grooves.
Oh yeah. And even that whole weird thing without the tea towels he'd put on the tom-toms to give him that sound, and it was that open hi-hat that made such a difference,
Oh, yeah.
because it really filled in all the, it was this wonderful white noise that filled in all the holes of whatever wasn't happening inside the band. Those early days, it was really kind of gave it a cohesiveness, I think, that you would have had with whatever anybody else was doing. I mean, drums were pretty jazzy still back in those days.
Very
and
much so.
Tom-toms were tuned high, and people closed the hi-hat up real tight, and you didn't hear that whooshy white noise sound. I don't know where he got that from, and it's funny, and I've studied the Beatles a great deal, but I've never really found where that came from, how he invented that sound, or maybe he stole it from somebody else and just made it famous.
So maybe that's another essential skill, I would say, is that as a drummer, you need to have your own creative approach. I mean, that has certainly helped me tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
A lot of people can get in there and play time. A lot of people can get in there and keep, lay something down for the band. But I think having your own discernible playing character is essential as well.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's essential in my opinion, but it's certainly important. I mean, I know a lot of guys that don't have any real, don't bring a lot to the show in that respect, that do quite well, making records, because they're just great at laying down a groove, and it's whatever's expected.
But if you're playing with a band and you're like touring and hanging with people, I feel like you need a little bit of a something.
I think that's become a little less and less, though. That's one area where I think technology has hurt.
You think?
Things, yeah, because so much stuff that is a personality, the drummers or bass player, whoever, actually the entire freaking band, it gets fixed.
Oh no, you're right.
And it gets taken out. So there's so much modern music now that you're not hearing the band.
Yeah.
You're hearing the band plus the editor.
Yeah, the production thing is definitely different now. It's a little harder to stand out that way.
That's
well,
one place where I love the Foo
Bonham,
Fighters.
They would have fixed all that now.
Yeah.
The fills kind of slow down a little bit in this wonderful way, and
think
they
of that
look,
Stevie
it's on
Wonder
the grid.
stuff.
Oh yeah, all the Stevie Wonder, all the Motown stuff, they'd fix all of it.
Even Iron Maiden's got mistakes in it, but it's fine.
I knew we love them. I mean, that's the thing about.
Oh yeah.
We often really enjoy those little blips in there. The little thing that's minorly out of tune, or the fill that slows down, that gives it real impact going back in. Even clicks changed that a great deal when I was young, when suddenly everything was done with a click.
Yeah.
Because it didn't breathe anymore. And I understand editing, of course, you have to use clicks, and it's just, you don't have to, but for most music we do, because it's just easy to edit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there is something wonderful, like about the old Police stuff, when that stuff was just rushed like crazy, and it was great. I mean, it made the music so exciting to have those tempos change. I mean, a huge example is Pink Floyd and the Money, which is a classic song. That whole solo section, it rushes. It must be 10 ticks. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
So much that you have to put the brakes on when he comes back to the last verse. It's like,
well, Asia, heat of the moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That
is
song,
crazy.
the center,
how-
it's a whole different song almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had Bill Matoyer in here, who was the producer and engineer for Metal Blade for many years.
Oh,
he did
yeah.
like Armored Saint and Trouble and like the first couple of Slayer albums, and he was like, there was no click. You just let it rip.
Right, exactly.
You know?
And that's what gives those records a real
Character.
A real character. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So we lost that. And then all the technology stuff, it brings so many great things.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, what happens, it seems, with humans is we always throw away the old when we get the new.
Mm.
So we do leave some really cool things behind. And some of that is allowing the drums to be off the grid.
Right.
I think I hate to see that gone because it makes drummers not have as much personality. They're just not able to because everything is put to the grid.
A lot of
They
it
can
also.
still do other. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's
They
right.
can still do other things. Like you say, there's other elements they can bring, which is writing interesting drum parts for the music. And so even if it's gridded out, you still can bring wonderful ideas. You just
Yeah.
may not be able to change the flow of things to much degree.
I think a lot also depends on the artist in question and how much power they have over the situation. Because if you're
True.
a signed artist and there's a lot of money behind your record, everything's going to be to clicks and it's going to be very produced and very controlled. Whereas if you're dealing with a band where there's maybe not the biggest budget, but they might go, you know what, do something that's going to sell. Figure it out. You know,
Yeah.
some bands, like especially in the genre that I like the most, they don't even bother with the click. They're like, just go for it.
It's wonderful.
It all depends really.
I mean, it's like the old Metallica stuff without a click, and then it was done with a click. It was a whole different thing.
Whole different vibe.
You know,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to say which one is better or worse. They're neither one, but it was a whole different thing.
Oh
that's for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
You
It
know,
was a
changed significantly.
completely different band.
There's a couple, speaking of Metallica, right now on tapeop.com and on reverb.com, there's a couple really good articles with Bob Rock.
Oh yeah.
Talking
making those
about,
records?
yeah. And both articles cover a little bit different things. They're both interviews, so if you go to read both of them, there's some really cool little
Oh,
insights
I have to see that. Is it in the magazine too, or just online?
I don't know. My subscription ran out. I got to renew it.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
read it online this
Yeah, I
morning.
just got the new one.
And then
Nice.
Reverb has had some good. Reverb.com's had some good ones
I didn't
lately.
even know
One
they
of
had.
them
I
was
buy
Bob
gear
Rock.
there, but I didn't. They have articles.
Oh, tons.
Oh yeah, that's part of
Yeah.
what they do. Yeah.
Oh, I never even
Yep.
noticed it. I just
The-
go there to
The
buy
Bob
gear.
Rock stuff is interesting because he got the Metallica gig because of the drum sounds of Dr. Feelgood.
Yep.
That's how they hired him. And
Oh.
Dr. Feelgood, when that came out, he said that's right when Tommy Lee was getting into hip hop and all that stuff. So Bob Rock said Tommy was just pushing me to make everything fatter, bigger, more bottom end.
Mhm.
So he's like the word became weight. Everything had to have more weight to
Weight.
it.
So Bob Rock actually learned something from Tommy Lee.
Tommy
in
Lee,
that
yep.
case. Interesting.
Yeah,
I
and
never knew
Tommy
that.
was really a part of that process too.
Yeah.
And then that's what got him the Metallica gig. They heard that and they're like, "We want this guy."
It's too bad that record didn't sell.
Only 5 or 6 people bought that one.
Yeah,
Right?
it's too bad. Too bad when you get a flop like the Black Album.
Yeah,
you know, it's
that'll
sad.
never do anything.
No.
There's none more black.
None more black.
Well, Charlie, I'd be interested to ask you because you see, what do you see in the changes in the way these sessions are handled now? Are people in a hurry?
Yes.
Okay, so they're still in a big
my
hurry.
lord.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I get people coming, yeah, we need to come in and do drums on a couple tunes. We only need like an hour and a half. Songs are 3 minutes long. Yeah. That's not going to happen.
So just enough time to set the drums up and not get
Yeah.
any sounds.
But
yeah.
I think
Right,
it's
right.
the biggest thing that I've seen is the lack of pre-production, the lack of thinking about what your sound is or what you want it to be. Not that you have to know everything, but there's just a plan. You come in and you start getting sounds. You go, oh, that sounds good, but does it sound right?
Now, is that
You know.
a young or inexperienced musician thing, or is that everybody's
I've
doing
seen
that?
it a lot.
Wow.
I mean,
so
the older guys obviously do as much pre-production as they can. The ones that have been doing it for a long time still.
Right,
but
right.
So, I know the young, a lot of them, not everybody, but I would say the majority. You know, there's maybe a couple rehearsals, but it's just to try to learn parts or something. It's not paying attention to overall arrangements. It's not paying attention to, okay, what's the vibe of this tune? What are we trying to go for?
Right.
I mean, there's elements in some of the bands, like the drummer, like Eli Cherry, he's a great drummer who's worked here a bunch in the last year, and he's brought in several different projects, and he's always been one of the few that would come in and go, okay, here's what we're looking for sound-wise. Like, so, and it's like, great, now I can map this out.
Totally.
But that's missing a lot. You
The-
start talking about references, and people send me, you know, an album, and I'm going, okay, wait, you just sent me
recording
you
and,
know.
and making records is a different skill, and I think a lot of bands think that you just set up some mics and here we go, and
Right.
it's not quite that. I mean, I was guilty of that for sure. Like,
Mhm.
I had a lot of learning to do about how to play drums in this environment. Like,
Yeah.
I had played a lot of live drums, but before I moved here, I had been in the studio a couple of times, but I was always the guy who wanted to get the record done and get out there and play more. But then as I learned what actually goes into all this, I was like, oh, you really got to know you got to like set the mics up in the right place, and
But then you got to
all
know
that
what
kinda
you're
stuff.
going for as well, because
Yeah.
if you're going for Bonham, but you set up your fusion drum set,
You
your
got your 10-inch
20 by
tom.
18, 10, 12, 14,
And you wanna do it in an hour.
low, it's like, that's not going to happen, and that happens a lot. And after the fact, they're like,
it does
you know,
happen a lot.
hey, I know, can you make my guitar sound like a Les Paul, but you recorded it with a Telly?
Mhm.
No, you probably should have used your Les Paul when we did that.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a
it's
lot of
interesting
that.
to mention that about guitar players, and a good thing I think for drummers, Dan, is that they're really short on is like the sound of things. I'm sure we all experienced. I remember when I first went to the studio. I think I was 14 or 15. I'm sure the drums sounded terrible. I still have the old tracks. And they sound terrible. I didn't really know how to get sounds. I learned that when I came here to LA, and I got lucky and started doing sessions pretty much right away. And from doing those, got some ideas actually from the engineers. I remember when I first did a session, I took a lesson with a really famous, wonderful drummer, Ralph Humphrey. I'm sure you guys know him. And
I think he's got the Dancing with the Stars gig, or at least he did for a while.
he did. Now they have a different band on there, a smaller, kind of like a combo. They got rid of the orchestra. But he gave me some lessons on how to tune, and they were incredibly effective. I mean, he understands that stuff well. And I practiced a great deal on how to tune. Tuning's an art, tuning the drums well.
Oh, yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, in the old days, we'd hire people to come in and do it. Just that's what they did. They came and tuned drums. And we still do when possible, because I hate tuning drums.
I know. It's also just nice to have someone that's so good at it. You can go, here's what I need, and they go, oh, yeah, got you.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good at tuning, but it makes me nervous because every once in a while you don't get it.
Yeah.
And you end up with a tom-tom that just sounds like crap, and you're trying to pretend like it's good. And
That's
you're not
why
gonna
I
use
keep
it.
adding more drums, because I'm pretty good at tuning, but I'm slow. So
just
I
put
find,
another
this
drum
kit
up.
sounds great that way. Hey, let's just use a different kit, and just got 5 kits tuned up.
Yeah.
Yeti says on here, this is a good point. Recording to tape made bands prepare and rehearse more. Which goes back to what you said earlier, because it wasn't as easy to change or fix things.
No, it definitely
No, and
wasn't.
because the clock was ticking and the budget was like, you have this much time. It brings a little different element of preparation.
And a real lack of ability to punch. I mean, I think for drums that was a huge deal. It was very difficult to punch drums. I mean, again, people did it, of course, all the time, but you could hear it most of the time.
Yeah.
You can hear it. They would just bury it with other things, so you couldn't really make it out too much.
Oh,
but
you get away with murder with some of that stuff.
Yeah.
the
Rem-
digital ended all that.
One of my old classmates just checked in. Remy goes, Slayer! What's up, Remy? Thank you for watching.
There's another good comment here. Somebody said, preparation for sessions? Nah, we'll just do it in post.
That's exactly the thought, though. It really is. We'll fix it in the mix, but you can't mix
God.
it. You can't fix a turd, though. That's the problem.
The thing is, you can take a lot of vibe out of it, too, of what you really wanted when you start fixing everything.
Yeah.
Oh, great, I wanted a 26-inch kick, and we used an 18, so now I'll just layer that sample and layer this sample, and then next thing you know...
It doesn't even sound like the band anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you guys, but I fall prey to it too. When I'm home editing drums, if I fix one thing, then I fix 10 things.
Yeah.
It's like, that one snare is kind of wacky, so maybe I'll just move it over. And then I fix 5 more.
I've gotten pretty good at
stopping yourself.
Stopping, yeah. And I'm not against samples or stuff. I rarely use them.
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes there's a way or you need a support that it works better and cleaner than an EQ.
Yeah.
Or something like say, okay, great, layer that sucker up in there. But it's taken some practice, but now I've gotten down to where if it's only need to fix 1 or 2 things and the rest is great, you do it.
Just leave it
And then
alone.
you got to listen in context, because like the snare thing, when you solo up drums, you'll hear every inconsistency.
Yeah.
The backbeat's slightly changing, but once you layer the bass, maybe there's a couple guitar parts, maybe there's a vocal, possibly a keyboard, and all of a sudden, some of those inconsistencies get eaten up by the song.
And also sometimes those, back to the thing we initially said, sometimes those inconsistencies are really cool. Like, Charlie and I worked together on Tita Hutchison's record. What was it called? Hello, Love.
Yeah.
And, I had to put the drums on last. And
2 of the songs we did drums
Yeah.
in the middle of the mixing process.
Yeah, we decided they needed drums all of a sudden and put some drums on them. And some of the little parts where some things pulled back. When I first, Charlie's like, no, it's good. I'm like, no, it's not. I think it pulls back a little bit. And then we heard him in the mix, and it was like, oh, I guess that's because the music pulls back a little there. So, you start soloing things, you get in trouble because then suddenly you think,
context.
oh, the drums aren't really perfect there. And then you realize, oh, okay, maybe I was cool and I actually, responded to the music. Or I just screwed up.
Yeah. One of the things
my fault.
One of the things that got me through this process, I think since the last time I saw you, I actually put a solo record out of all my own stuff called.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's called Conflict 10.
Do you have a copy for me?
It's just digital only. I'll send you a link.
I'm old. I need a copy.
Yeah. I got to make those eventually, but
it'd be fun. Actually, I'd love to hear it.
I had to learn how to do a lot of things to make that
So you
happen.
wrote all the material too?
I wrote everything. I programmed everything. It's very digital. It's like a little industrial, a little heavy metal, a little video game-ish, like little movie soundtrack.
I want to hear it, Dan. That sounds cool.
Yeah. So I had to sit there and figure out how to do all this. I asked Charlie a shit ton of questions about this as we were going along. Luckily, my extra help over here. But I got to the point where I would tweak this and tweak that and change this and I got to the point where like, this is not better anymore. This is just different.
Yeah.
Like you have to find where it stops being better and just starts being different.
You have to know when to abandon the mix. It'll never be done, so it has to be abandoned.
Totally. Yeah.
That's from a guy that's been sitting on the same songs for about 10 years.
That's because you give yourself no deadlines.
That's that too.
At some point.
Plus, I always feel like I can make them better. It's
I definitely pushed my deadline back a bunch of times.
Tim George Lucas Pedersen.
And if I could just put one more guitar down, I'll be great.
Yeah, let's add one more sample here. Oh, the snare drum's almost perfect. But you end up having to talk yourself out of this. At least I did, because I'm there like, this does not matter at all. And especially when you're listening to it for the bazillionth time.
Oh, yeah.
I got to the point where I'm like, okay, does it sound okay in the car? Okay. It sounds okay in the speakers. It sounds okay in the headphones. I'm tired of this. We're good. That's when it was finished.
And, for me, because Charlie's had to deal with me with this, I'm a multi-instrumentalist, so I play guitar and I play bass. And,
nice.
And so I do the same thing with all of them. I'm always trying to make sure, the different parts, and I'm trying to make it my mind. And making up my mind about things isn't my forte, I'm afraid. So when we do guitars and such, it takes some time just to get. I'm really particular about sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it takes time to get those things doing. And you're right, making those decisions and finally saying, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Usually for me, it's when my fingers won't move anymore. But Charlie would like to stop it a long time before that. But
I'm definitely not as picky about the other instruments. Like for the guitar parts that I laid down and the keyboard stuff, I was like, that's good enough. But like with the drums, I'm there like nitpicking the shit out of it.
I'm the opposite, isn't it funny? I do the drums and I nitpick them, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in the other parts. Maybe because I've done them less.
That's part of it.
Part of my career.
I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah.
I'm working on the follow-up to this now, and I'm digging in a little harder with the other elements, and it's cool. It's a lot of fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I play the drums longer than live, so it's it becomes sort of you just done it such a long time.
Yeah.
But it's also your perception of what the drums are. For you, it's a supportive thing. So
Absolutely.
you get it down, it's done.
Yeah.
And it's your first instrument. So even though you're picky, it goes faster, and then you get into all the other stuff.
That's true. Yeah, I really. That's
I like
a good
sloppy.
Point. Yeah.
I like movement. I like things to be a little odd, a little off, because that's why I like early metal. All that early Slayer shit's the best ever.
Yeah.
Ever since then, it's all gone downhill. A lot of great bands, but there's just something about that stuff that just makes you want to fucking beat somebody up or drive too fast on the freeway. It has that element to it.
Well, it is that perfection I think that Dan's talking about. I think when you start perfecting that stuff, it starts to sound like, especially when you get all the triggering going on, it starts to sound like machines.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I listen to things, and my son is a huge metal fan.
Oh, yeah.
And he'll play me things, and I'll say, it's a machine. He goes, no, it's a guy. And it is a guy really playing, but everything has been sampled and repaired, and it's all so perfect that it's almost he may was well programmed it. I mean, of course, playing it probably took a lot less time than it would have to programmed it, but
right.
That's always been my experience.
Yeah, because programming is slow to do that kind of stuff.
It's very meticulous.
Oof.
Yeah.
For metal stuff, man, because you have to play so many intricate parts. It's
but again, it becomes one of those. All right, is this done, or do I let it go, or am I going to beat this to death?
Right,
right. That gets into that especially. Like, when I did my first record with Cobra Venom, Extinction Reality, I definitely beat the parts to death. Now the good news is that they came out well, But
Yeah.
I got real stuck on one song and got so frustrated. And at the end of the day, like looking back on it now, I can laugh, but it was like miserable. Like I threw my headphones and I like stormed out of the room at one point because I was so frustrated with myself.
I did that in the
You know?
studio. The same thing. I
Yeah.
punched the studio wall though.
Oh,
It won. I still have a
Oh,
bump here
man.
from it.
ouch.
Same thing. It was one of the easier ones. All the other stuff I'd prepared all over and over. Got frustrated. It was like 4 a.m. recording. Got up, tossed the headphones.
Yeah.
Didn't think. Hand went flying through the air
And
before
landed.
I could think.
Well, it's the
Unfortunately, there was a
most-
very thick studio wall there.
when you work as hard as we do on doing something, doing one thing, you know, for a long time, it's very frustrating when it goes poorly.
Yes.
You know, if it doesn't go great, it's fine. But when it goes really, you know, we all play. I mean, maybe we don't all, but sometimes I play badly.
Something that
You
made
know,
me
it's
feel
just-
better.
I never have.
Maybe I should. Well, I didn't mean badly.
Except for those times you kicked me off the stage. Other than that, I've been a genius.
Yeah, something that made me feel better about that particular experience that I had, and of several others before that. I was reading about an article with Butch Vig about making Nevermind, like on the 20th or 25th anniversary of the record, whatever it was. And they were talking about how In Bloom drove Dave Grohl completely insane. Like
Just trying to
because-
get the thing down.
yeah, like he was able to play through almost all the tunes, but that song, for some reason, he wasn't getting the fills right, and he was losing the groove, and it's got that laid back thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like he would just struggle with that. He'd either start playing too fast, or he'd play too slow, or he'd be inconsistent. And they were like, that was the most brutal song ever to get through on that record.
Interesting.
And he goes, and you can hear, like the way that it moves, you can tell that he's uncomfortable. And I never noticed it before, but I always liked that tune. It never occurred to me that anything about it was bad, but being
But
a
see,
drummer and
'cause
having
you
that
thought-
level, I'm like, now
Yeah.
that I listen to it, I'm like, I can tell this is a little different from the other ones.
But only after you knew the secret, because before that you probably
Yeah.
dug the way it grooved,
Yeah,
even though it's
totally.
tight. You know, it's,
But the
that's
fact
an
that
interesting thought.
it sounds really good, and
Yeah.
you know, I listened to the song that I struggled with now, a song called Cold War Battle, and I like the way it sounds, and I'm like, God, I remember hating every second of doing this,
Yeah.
but you
It's
know.
always funny to hear it like 5 years later, isn't it?
Oh,
Because you don't expect anything from it. I hate my drumming when I first hear it,
oh yeah,
and then I really enjoy it when I forget it's me.
totally.
Like later on, I can listen and go, "Oh, that's really nice playing." Because it often I find is, you know, maybe you guys don't fall prey to this, but what I really want to hear, I only get a certain percentage of it, and
Mhm.
then I just that's just as much of it as I get, you know, in a
Yeah.
take. You don't get 100% of what you're hoping you're gonna get in something often. Now, maybe I don't know, maybe you guys don't experience that, but
No, I definitely have that sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when for me, 9 out of 10 times, if I'm actually tracking, I'm still trying to keep it real. I'm not going to go edit it to death.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I'll get, you know, maybe 80% of it will be like, oh, yeah, and there'll be a couple spots, like, whatever.
Right.
But in the context of things, it still feels all right.
Yeah.
I let it
But
slide.
yeah, you have to let it go. That's the thing. But I hear it in my head always, the whole complete thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I can never quite make it as cool as it sounds in my head.
Yeah.
Close, you know, I can get close, but for some reason I don't. You know, I hear it back and it's like, oh, it's not. You know,
I've learned
that
to-
wasn't Baccaro enough there, or that wasn't this
Yeah.
enough there, or something. That
I've learned that the recording of whatever music that it is, I have to give it enough room to be its own experience. Like, whatever I hear in my head, I will practice the shit out of the songs and make sure I'm ready to go play the session or do the whatever it is. But I also now, after a lot of years of doing this, I'm like, this is going to be different from what I'm thinking it's going to be. I
Yeah.
need to give myself just a little bit of room because I might come up with something better.
True.
You know? Because if you get too stuck with it has to be this way, you might actually miss an opportunity.
true. That's
So
a good point.
I've learned to go, all right, as long as these 3 things work, I'm cool with a little bit of wiggle room. You know?
Well, I don't
So-
think. I guess for me, I'm not talking about the parts themselves. I guess I'm talking about whatever I was hoping to convey with it.
Oh, okay.
That's what I really mean.
So that's a
more than the-
songwriting element then, or
Well, it's more of
maybe
just
character.
a groove of it, or just what I expect the drums to convey in a song. I can't put it any better than that, I'm afraid. But
okay.
it's not really the parts as much because that part's easy. You know,
So you're talking about the vibe of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
exactly, and exactly where I want the position of the song to be. You know, you have it in your head exactly where it sits, and then there's a lot of other variables that affect that.
Totally.
But you know, I'm a Charlie can say this. I definitely am not a lover of my own playing until some time goes by. So.
I think
No.
I think a lot of us are in that category.
Yeah.
It can be weeks after a session before he finally goes, yeah, that is
That
pretty
drummer's
good.
good, man.
Like, I told you that like minutes after we did.
Oh, yeah, when I first hear it, I just generally,
Man,
it creeps me out.
I listened the other night. I put on one of my records that I did in New York before I even came here, and one of the tunes, there's a part that I just fucked up so badly, and it haunted me forever. And I'm listening to it now, like, that's really not that bad. I got crazy about this for no reason.
Yeah.
It's never quite as bad as you think it is.
Yeah. Oh, it was the worst thing in the history of recorded music at the time when I heard it.
No, I've lost sleep over stuff before,
Yeah.
But it happens to everybody. Funny you tell a story about, you told a story about Nevermind. I remember years ago I read about Picaro and those guys recording Gaucho for Steely Dan. And they played I think it was that song, but they played some particular song over and over again. And finally, Fagan and Becker left because they were frustrated. And those guys stayed on for hours until they could figure out a way to get it to sound like the artist wanted it to sound. And they did. They got it. So when they came in the next day.
That's the definition of pro right there.
Absolutely.
It's not about you. You're
it.
there to do the job of whoever's hiring you or you're working for.
And that's pro on both sides because those Steely Dan guys were such big pros that the pros that worked for them wanted to show them that they could get the parts that they wanted.
Right.
Totally.
So, it's a reciprocal kind of thing because sometimes, like Charlie just said a few minutes ago, it's frustrating to work for an artist that doesn't know what they want.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
It is very, very difficult for musicians. And I think artists sometimes forget that everybody's trying to do the best thing for them. We are working for them, absolutely. But if you can convey to some degree what you want from us, we can do even better, stuff from them. So.
That is one area that I can say. I'm just going to make a general drummer thing here because I know it's not everybody, but it is a large portion of drummers that I get to see here and some of the other places I work is you got to think you can't get stuck being a drummer when you're in there trying to make music and just think of your own parts. You have to pay attention to the song. Does it work? I know you may just put this fill in that you love and you think it's great, but does it work? Is it really the right thing? Is the feel right? You have to take yourself away from your instrument.
Yeah.
And almost approach it backwards, like from the producer, artist back to you.
Well, I think it would be beneficial for any and every drummer to play a melodic instrument also.
I agree.
Because it just makes them look at it. Everything looks different from the front of the stage. It just looks different than it does from the back of the stage. And from writing songs and, playing other instruments and getting those things done, it really makes me understand the role of the drummer, which is even to me a more important role than I thought it was when all I thought about was the drums. But we could be so much more musical if we're more musical, So play a little guitar, pick up the bass, bang out a few chords on the piano, anything. It doesn't mean like you have to pick it up and be great at it, but the melodic instruments are very different from playing the drums.
Yeah.
It's a very, very different thing. I think drumming is the hardest instrument there is because we have the pressure of keeping the band together.
Well,
so in some ways it's easiest.
You can't hide your mistakes. So if you fuck up as a drummer, everybody hears you. You fuck up as a bass player, you could do anything. Hit a football, even a guitar player. There's so many ways to pass it off.
Sure.
Just look at the drummer all pissed off. That's what my bass players do. What did you do? I didn't do anything. What are you talking about?
I do that. I've done that when I play bass on gigs.
I can see Minnow doing that, totally.
He's actually pretty good. When Minnow looks at me, it's because I deserve it.
Oh, yeah.
But once in a while,
he's a great bass player.
He's a good bass player.
Yeah, he's a great bass player, that guy.
Yeah. We have a good time in Clifton Mall. We all know
is
each
he in
other's
that band? I didn't
yeah.
realize that.
Yeah, we're in it. We actually started it together. We got Hatfield, and then we brought Chris on later. So it was really really fun. All right. We've actually kind of started stumbling into the other topic I wanted to talk to you about, which is music education. So a lot of what we're talking about is pretty education based at this.
Yeah.
So you've taught many drummers.
Oh my, yeah.
And some other musicians too.
Yeah.
So I guess what do you feel like as a teacher now is the most important thing to convey to the musicians that you're instructing?
Ooh, that's a big question, Dan.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Glad that's not my question.
Yeah, I know. You don't have something else like what's in bottled water or something, do you?
Well,
Water.
Yeah.
You know, I think music education, at least I hope it is, has changed a great deal from when I was younger and teaching. I started teaching drums when I was 16. Isn't that funny?
Oh, nice.
I was just a kid at my local music store, but I always loved teaching. And I think, for one thing, it's bringing your expertise of what's good. Not what's good, that's a terrible word to use. What you can help the student improve upon. But it's also, I think, important to now that we didn't used to do, is really look at the student as an individual and understand what they can do well. Because some guys aren't that good, but they are really good at something, you know. And to get in the way of a student or to ruin it for them, I think, by being too divisive, I guess would be the word. So I think, and I'm not, everybody shouldn't get a trophy. I'm not talking about that by any means. I'm just saying, really nowadays, I think we need to, because you can analyze people's playing and give them feedback on what they're already doing. And that way you can start to help them build what they already have, you know. And then you've got to teach them the stuff they don't have any idea about, absolutely, because like you say, that's where we learn to bring back to our music something fresh and new. Yeah. You know, I'm not the king of jazz by any means, but learning to play jazz and playing in jazz bands for several years in college was a big deal. You know, it was a very, very important part of how I attack the drums now, even though I would consider myself a rock and pop player, primarily. So
with the class that I teach at Los Angeles City College, I teach in drums for teens and adults, beginner and intermediate. It's Chuck Silverman's old class. Andrew Brown took over when Chuck stopped teaching there, and now I have the class.
Very cool.
What I try to do, especially because it's a continuing ed, community relations kind of class. There's no grades or anything.
Right. No pass fail or anything?
No, it's just show up and play drums with Dan.
Neat.
It's a great deal on the class too, and like the thing, because it is a volunteer, you're there on a weekend. There's no grade. You're there because you want to be there. The most important thing for me is to give them my love and enjoyment of playing.
Absolutely.
I feel like once I give them that, and they're really excited to play and to practice, then we can drill into now you get to learn rudiments, and now you get to learn what eighth notes are, and now getting them excited about playing, to me, is the most important thing.
That's the way I think it should always be done.
Absolutely.
Technique, all that other stuff is secondary to the music.
Oh, yeah.
And if you get in and you start learning it, then you figure out where the technique can help you. Then you start filling in the gaps.
Absolutely.
But so much of it's done backwards. There's so much technique given up front.
It's easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to be mean to teachers, but it's not, that's the part that's easy. But unfortunately for the student, it's so boring that you can turn a student off to an instrument before they've had a chance to decide if they want to play it.
Exactly.
And that's so. I agree with you, Dan and Charlie, about that, because now when I teach, it takes me weeks to start to discuss even holding the sticks with somebody, because they usually pick them up in some way, and they can able to bang out some beats. And so I get beats to happen, I get songs to happen, and I warn them. I said, this is going to be fun, but we're going to have to do the part later, the reading and the rudiments and the holding of the sticks.
I actually modeled my class after the PIT classes, where the first half of my class, the first hour of the 2-hour class, is reading and rudiments, and I make everybody buy a pad and really go through how to look at notes. And I tell them, I'm not doing this to torture you. I'm doing this so that you can go to a music store and buy a book of a band that you like, or go on the internet and look up exercises. If I give you the tools, you can do a lot more than just listen to me carry on about this forever. And then the second half of the class, everybody plays the kit. Whoever's not playing watches. So I make sure they get the fundamentals, because only a 5-week-long class. 5 weeks is not enough time to really learn how to do anything, but the goal of that class, like I said, I want to get them excited like I am, and I want to give them enough material. The last week of the class, I make them all play a song that they like for the rest of the class. And most of them get to the point where they can play something. We'll do a verse and a chorus to keep it simple, but I like taking them from, I don't know what any of this is, to this is me playing my favorite song.
I know, if you can motivate them, it's shocking how quickly you can get them to play something that's motivating for them.
Absolutely.
And playing music is why we all do it. And drums, this is only my opinion, but drums are a very subservient instrument. I've practiced a lot in my lifetime. I'm not a person that enjoys practicing, but it's something that needs to be done. But I love to play. I mean, I could play with musicians, all day and night.
Yeah.
But after a few hours of practice, I've had enough of banging on them by myself.
I
so
can do about 5 minutes now.
yeah, it gets harder, doesn't it? I used to be able to do 5-8 hours, but boy, I can do 5-8 minutes now. So
I skip entire days now, which is bad. But I always know, all right, make sure you do at least this much, or you're gonna lose stuff. So
you do, but you know what? It's sometimes like I've been doing a lot of bass gigs. I play bass in a band, and
oh, nice.
So that's been taking a lot of my time right now. So there's big holes in times when I play in the drums. But, it's interesting to get away from it a bit when you've played as long as I have and kind of, at least it worked for me, take a little bit of a breather. Because then you come back with some fresh things. I not stopped, but I had a long enough break between playing drums and bass that I started to play a little differently. And
Right.
I really liked it. I liked the thing going in a different direction. Yeah, I mean, you probably found that when you were doing your album because you don't have as much time to play.
Mm-hmm.
So because you have to, like for me, I was working on a song with Charlie recently here that I wrote. And the drums, I was in a hurry just to get them done. I mean, I was actually in a hurry because I knew I needed all the other time to do the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at the drums after that. We got the drums done. I think we did them first on this.
Yeah,
one.
we did them first.
Yeah, we did the drums first on this because we knew this. I'd worked on the song for a long time.
Right.
But that was, you had to. There's only so much time in a day.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think you lose anything. I think as long as you're playing music.
That's true.
Because how much do we not know about this? Can you always be faster? Absolutely. Can you always? And you play a music that takes a lot more upkeep than I do.
Yeah. Well, it also I've been doing it so long that I can tell when it needs the work and how much it needs. Like if I have a Cliff 'Em All show coming, I drill hard for like a month before the first rehearsal. Because by the time I'm in the room with those three guys, I better be in good shape. And then we do 2 or 3 rehearsals before we do the gig.
See that, man?
Yeah, hopefully we'll be playing again.
Pretty
soon.
good.
Yeah, and you
Charlie's
saying
been
it was
a couple
really
times.
good. Yeah, I gotta check it out.
Yeah,
especially because that era, it's the early times. Right?
It is, and we play at their live speeds. We don't play the record speeds.
Ernesto and I were at the last show, and we were just in the back of the room just laughing hysterically.
Is
at
it
how
just blazing?
fast some of it was. I was tired watching it. I had to sit down.
Oh, I gotta see this, Dan. That'd be fantastic.
And they're tight.
Yeah.
It's tight.
And we play Whiplash and Fight Fire with Fire, and we tear through the songs. So, because if we're going to do that and be like the crazy era Metallica band, we got to do it.
I got to check that out. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think back to your initial question, I think that's how education, I hope, will change. It's difficult for large organizations to make big changes. And I think they think, and maybe they're right, I could certainly be wrong, but they think that it's working well. But I think it's important to look, there's just so much technology available that's so inexpensive.
Yeah.
So if when I was first teaching years ago at Musicians Institute, you would just tell somebody, well, it's slowed down or it's sped up. To determine how much that is, unless you're recording it, is impossible to understand. So
yeah.
Then when it became time to actually let them be in the studio, they learned so much more quickly because you could point it out. Well, it's slowed down. Well, how much? Well, this much. Let me play it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you meant. That's what it feels like. So it's not slowing down. It's just pulling back too far. It's like, well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not saying that somebody's not a good teacher because they can't explain that. It's something that, it's such a variable. So allowing a student to hear their performances, I think that is the ultimate education now. To have somebody that understands how to improve a student's ability to perform, let the student hear what they're doing, see if they can hear what's wrong.
And see it, too. There's
And
so
see it on
much.
the grid.
We have video phones now. So it's,
absolutely. And you can do it anywhere, any place, and it can sound damn good.
Yeah.
So sound better than some records I used to make.
Yeah. The main thing that I always try to convey to the students too is, number one, I don't want them feeling, especially in the beginning class, don't feel pain. If something hurts, stop. Let's talk about it. That's the first thing, because I don't want any injuries. And the other one is I want them to have fun doing it.
Absolutely.
Especially in the beginner level. As they get into like the harder class that I teach, I drill them a little bit more. Instead of they get to pick what they want to play, I give them a list and they get to pick some things, and there's some stuff they just have to play. So I
nice.
turned the pressure up a little bit on them in the next class. But
Yeah.
in the beginning, it's I want you to get excited about playing so that when you have to practice freaking quarter notes, like I want you to be able to go, this is to learn how to play the song. That's why I'm doing it.
See, that's
you know?
exactly the point. I think is it used to be, oh, let's practice on the pad, and then later we'll play the drum set. And it's like, okay, I'll do that. But now I think if you can offer, highlights to them, like,
Yeah.
look, you just do these paradiddles, because then you're going to be able to do this. It's like, oh, okay,
And that's exactly
that's
what I'm
worth learning.
That
you know?
and I do that especially with drags and roughs. Like it seems like that's the most awkward, stupid thing to play on the pad. But when I show them a ghost note groove with the snare drum, they're like, "Oh, that's why I need to learn how to do that." You
Exactly.
know,
See,
it's
but-
practical.
Yeah,
you
but
know?
I think
Right.
there was a time when teachers didn't feel like they were supposed to have to teach anybody, that they were just this authority and they were going to tell you what to do. And I think that's a real error, because you can turn, the diehards are going to always play and get better.
Yeah.
But you can really wound people that could have ended up being really great musicians if you're not careful with music education. And there's a lot of people doing it great out there. I mean, lots of people doing it great.
And honestly, I feel like, part of my responsibility is like I could be unlocking the next awesome drummer to do great tunes.
Exactly.
Like, I want more of that. That's one of the reasons why I like it. I like the idea of like growing, the next era of Jedi Knights. Jedi drummers.
Well, years ago, I heard this interview with Roger Moore. I think he just passed away recently, James Bond. And he went to some big acting school in England. And the guy, the head of the school, took him aside and said, "I'm sorry, you'll never be an actor. You just don't have it." So what an amazing thing to say to somebody. And then the guy to go on to have such a career, And yeah, was he a great actor? It's hard to know, but he was James Bond.
I hope he stopped by one day and knocked on the door. Remember me?
I know. But I just can't imagine that, someone would have the audacity to say that to somebody. But I think that it's not just music education. I think that education, it can be such an amazing thing, or it could be a real crushing thing.
Especially with something like the arts, where people who are going to go to the next level with an art, whether it's acting or music or some sort of creative discipline, like you're clearly into it and you can get crushed because it's a career path and a passion, and now you're being told you're no good.
Yeah.
Like that's the brutal part of it. That's the part I'd like to see change, because I feel like that old school mentality of you can't do it and we're going to do it this way. There is a way to make a really great player into a legend doing that, but making a good player into a great player is much harder. My guitar player in
Absolutely.
Among the Infected, Lee, brought that up, and he was right. That old school, like that disciplinarian way of doing things, like
It's
turning
not
good into
effective,
great.
yeah.
That doesn't work.
No. It was the methodology for many, many, many generations, I guess. The old thing with the piano teacher and rapping your knuckles with the ruler, But it's like you say, stepping on somebody's passion, and who's to say if somebody's no good,
Yeah.
I mean,
So many terrible musicians made great music. So
exactly,
Right.
I
It's
mean,
very subjective.
I'm a huge Cure fan. Is Robert Smith a great singer? Hard to know. But if he was in a music school to learn about singing, they would probably listen to him and go, "Okay, let's see if we can fix that thing up, Robert."
Absolutely.
But I love what he does. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So, that personality is what gets forgotten sometimes in education, because we have this cookie cutter mentality. But I mean, I really have to emphasize that that's changing. I think out there a great deal. I hope that hope you guys see that when you see people perform, that's changing. So
yeah.
I'm actually hopeful some of the much younger generations, late teens, early 20s, that they're actually playing together.
wow.
Yeah.
Like a band?
Or at least a lot of the people I get to work
When
for.
you're
Maybe
recording.
that's because of the way I do things, I don't know, but where we're tracking a lot of stuff. Like this country band I'm working with now, they're all early mid 20s. We're doing everything live, including the vocals. I mean, that's the setup right there. We're
That's
2 more
awesome.
days this
That's
weekend.
amazing.
But a lot of bands that way, we come in a day, knock out a few tunes, and it's at least keeping the drums, bass, and most of the time some of the guitars too.
I mean, we forget. People still try to emulate classic rock because somehow it's still popular. Floyd and all those old bands.
The whole doing something together thing
And that's what they did.
permeates the whole experience.
Absolutely, and that's why those records are still big with people even in their teens. That they go back and hear that music because there's a humanity in it, I think, that we forget. And so we're now often we try to make records where everybody playing separately. Oh, I want it to sound like that record. Well, they all played together.
It's also dominant in the other forms of media. Like all the Marvel movies have all songs from the 70s and 80s. Like
that's true.
You know, and video games too. There's old tunes getting into these games.
Well, they're effective apparently, or they wouldn't be bothering.
Yeah,
because they're not cheap to get those songs a lot of times.
No, especially not like I just saw Thor Ragnarok and they had the Immigrant Song in it, and I was like, okay,
that costs some money.
That costs some money, but it's Marvel, and it's like the 5th one of these things or 6th one of these things. But man, having Vikings fighting with the actual song, was like, this is awesome.
Was it a good movie?
I loved it.
Yeah, I got to see it. I heard it was fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah,
I mean, superhero aside, I thought it was just a fun movie.
That's
like,
what I heard.
Everything about it.
And the reviewer said that Marvel has finally brought back the fun to their movies.
Oh, it's so fun. And the composer, Mark Mothersbaugh, is amazing. Like,
is it Mark Mothersbaugh?
Yeah, he's put so many awesome styles. He's got like that epic classical music mixed with like 80s techno and then industrial and like heavy metal guitars. And it's just, I'm there like, this is all of my favorite things at once. Like, it was almost hard. It was almost
Dan
hard to
didn't
take
even
it
know there was a movie going on at that point. He's in the back.
Yeah. Oh, and without spoiling the movie, like the actual story and the things that were going on were also some of my favorite things. So I'm like, I can't take this all in. I have to see it again.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'll have to go see it.
Yeah, so we're actually getting close to the end here. We got through this quickly.
Wow, that did go by very quickly.
Fast. Very cool. So anything else, any parting words of wisdom for our audience here, Tim?
Just, if you want to play an instrument, play it, and play it well. Just take the time to know something about it, I think, and to listen to older players that did something before you and listen to new players that are doing new things and take it all in. Players are just going to get better and better and better. That's how it works. But we don't want to lose the humanity of things. And it's nice to hear from Charlie that stuff is returning to some degree, because that's really what makes great musicians, is musicians playing together with musicians.
Mm-hmm. Perfectly stated.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you again for being on the show, Tim.
Thanks
this
for
was
having me.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it very much. It was very fun.
Got it. Charlie, thank you again. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. Remember, the Music Chamber live on Facebook, on Instagram, on SoundCloud, at the MC Live on Twitter. We keep trying to sell this thing. We have some offers, but we think you guys can do better. There's got to be a rapper or a comedian who wants this. Come on, guys. And
December 7th, we'll be back here on the YouTube channel.
Yes.
With Toys for Tots benefit.
Yes, December 7th, and we're going to have another guest pretty soon before that happens, too. So stay tuned. We'll have more stuff for you. Thank you again. Have an excellent night.
Good night.
All right.
And my next job as...
Welcome to the Music Chamber Podcast.
What's that?